This conference will now be recorded.
All right, we'll just start now. So, just for the people who've just joined us, hi, my name is Dr. Bhavna Sharma. I work as an endocrine registrar in NHS London, and I'm a member of the TEACHIO team. This is a session on your first 3 minutes on OET speaking when you have your role play card in front of you and you're planning as to what you're going to say to the strange person sitting in front of you. So this is actually quite important, guys. If you plan your OET speaking quite well, then the actual scenario becomes extremely easy. Remember that this is an English exam. Like I always reiterate, this is an English exam. This is not a medical exam, but they are looking for particular things which they think are important and what they want to assess on your OET speaking. So they're looking for two things. They're looking for the linguistic criteria and they're looking for the clinical communication criteria. So that's what they're going to assess. So the way that you plan your task, you're going to make sure that you cover what they're asking you to do. In every exam, rather than trying to think about doing everything, we should look at what my examiner is going to ask me, and based on that you perform your task. Okay, and how do we do that? By appropriate and intelligent planning in your first 3 minutes on your OET speaking. Okay, so before I start my plan, what I would like everyone to do is if you can type into the chat window as to what you do in your first 3 minutes on the OET speaking when you have your prep time. What exactly are you looking for in the scenario? What are you reading? What's your plan and how do you use your 3 minutes? If people can just let me know by typing into the chat window, that's going to give me a good sense of what our background is. Okay, so Aruna has said that what she does is that she highlights the introduction. Then, like Jackson, she puts in the points into bullets. So task 1, task 2, task 3, and then she writes the conclusion. Jackson says he asked the examiner name of the patient. Okay, all right. So that's good. And that means we are planning our task. We can try and maximize our planning during the task by adding a few more points. Jackson has said he'll mark the keywords. Jackson, can you just let me know what do you think the keywords are on your task? Okay, so Aruna has said that the keywords on a task are reassurance, empathy, and treatment options, while Jackson has said assure and explain. Okay, that's actually quite good, guys. Let's just try and see what my strategy would be when I would like to attempt my OET speaking. What I've done is I've divided what I want to do into chunks of seconds. So it'll be 15 seconds I'm going to spend on this, 5 seconds on this, and 15 seconds on this. So I've done my preparation like that. So if you want to follow that, that might be quite useful to you. Okay. So the first thing that I would like to do on my OET speaking. So I've got my role play card in front of us. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, the first thing that I'm going to do, and which is often the most commonly mistaken thing on your OET speaking, and it's a very easily correctable thing. What people do is that they forget who the person in front of them is. So remember, your interlocutor can be a patient, they can be a patient's relative, they can be a patient's carer, and in some rare cases, it might be someone with another healthcare role. So you need to first know who you are. Are you someone in a clinic? Are you someone in a ward? Are you a senior doctor, a junior doctor? Are you a GP? Or if you're a nurse, what kind of a nurse are you? Are you a ward nurse? Are you a community nurse? Are you a district nurse? So you need to know what your role is, because that's going to guide how you're going to speak to the patient. Okay. We've talked about knowing who your patient is. Then, have you met this patient before? Guys, is actually quite important, because what people do a lot of times when we're conducting our mocks and even on the real OET exam, what they do is this is a patient who is in the ward and they're getting discharged today, and what they do is, because they've memorized this introduction, what they say is, what brings you into the hospital today? And that's actually quite embarrassing, because what the OET examiners are looking for is whether you'll be able to, if your English is enough that you'll be able to survive in a foreign country with where English is their primary language. So if you're going to use sentences like this, what they're going to think is that this person doesn't really know English. They've memorized a few sentences and they're using that sentence on this OET. So they're not really going to be safe doctors or nurses when they come into an English speaking country. So be very careful that you know what, have you met your patient before, and what point of are they in their discharge. So what I would do, at what point are they on your discharge is also quite important, because sometimes what might happen is that the patient is getting discharged today, and then you have to then you probably met this patient before, or you're going to approach the conversations like you're approaching a discharge. So you're going to ask them, so you're getting discharged today, and we're here to have a discussion about your impending discharge. And if the patient has just come into your ward, then your introduction is going to be different. It's going to be, um, I'm meeting you for the first time in this ward. Uh, we're just going to discuss your admission and the plan for your admission and your medication plan. So something like that. So how do I clarify roles in my first 10 seconds? How do I spend the least amount of time on it? What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these things. So first of all, I'm going to highlight who are you. So that's going to be a doctor in a suburban clinic. Who is your patient or who is your interlocutor? This is a worried parent. Have you met your patient before, or have you met the interlocutor before? I don't think so, because this seems to be a new discussion, because they've brought their young child to see you. So it's not a follow-up visit, it's a new visit. At what point are they in their discharge? It's not really a discharge, this is a first visit. Okay, so this is actually going to change um, your OET strategy and your OET speaking, your introductions, all of them are going to vary depending upon what your roles are. But it's very important that in the first 10 seconds you identify this, so that if you want to make sentences or you want to plan your sentences, you can remember them, because that's going to be your basic scoring, which will be your basic introduction. And how are you going to introduce yourself? Let's just try and ask people so that we can assess. So let's just do a little bit of an exercise. Um, the question is, guys, what you have to do is, you've got a patient who is admitted in your ward, and now they're getting discharged today. Now, what I want everyone to do is I want you to type into the chat window as to how you would introduce yourself to this patient. This is actually quite important. So, what I want everyone to do is I want you to type into the chat window as to how you would introduce yourself to a patient who's been admitted in your ward for some time and is now getting discharged today. We'll give everyone about 3 minutes. Okay, Smita, can you hear me now? Okay. Let's just try and go through what the answers were. So, one answer is, hello, my name is Doctor. I understand that we're here to discuss your discharge today. So that's good. Another answer is, hello, good afternoon. My name is Jackson John. I'm the nurse practitioner who will be looking after you today. How are you feeling today? So, Jackson, just be a little careful because remember, you're not looking after this patient. This patient is getting discharged today. So you're just going to have that discussion and probably the patient is going to go home after that. So who will be looking after you today will be a wrong sentence, or it won't be the best sentence. Not a wrong sentence, just not the best sentence to use. So um, try and give me another alternative sentence that you want to use. um, how are you feeling now? So I would again be very cautious about using standard sentences like this, Aruna. The first sentence was actually better when you said that I'm here to discuss your discharge. After that, probably you can say, how are you feeling now? Okay. All right. So good. Um, so what my point was here, that don't assume that you're going to use your standard introductions, or you're going to just use the standard sentence, what brings you into the hospital or how are you feeling now. The point is that you need to understand and clarify your roles very, very initially into your OET speaking, because that's actually going to enhance your score. Okay. All right. So Jackson has given us an alternative sentence now. So he's written, good evening, Mr. whatever the name is. I'm going to discuss about your discharge today. Okay, that's very good. Right. Okay, so that's the first initial 10 seconds that we're going to spend. If everyone's happy about this and you would like me to move on to the next plan, just type in yes. Okay, very good. Let's move on to the second part of our planning. Okay, right. The next part, now I'm going to do, so I've identified the roles. I've identified who the person in front of me is, who am I, what's the setting, and do I know this patient, and are they getting discharged or are they just getting admitted? Okay. After that, I'm going to do my first task reading. So that depends on your speed. So I would give 15 to 30 seconds for my first task reading, where I'm going to do a rapid reading of the task. So I'm going to just, so I've already read this. I've read this patient. That was from eczema. Find out what the patient wants to know, explain and talk about prognosis, answer questions, give advice on management. So it's going to be a very quick read through the task. Okay. So now I know what the body of the task is, how many task points do I have, what the roles are. Now I'm going to strategize my speaking. And how do we do that? We're going to be putting numericals before task points. I think the students initially did say, all of you guys did say that you're going to put bullet points in front of your task points. So instead of bullet points, guys, what I would do, and it makes your life quite easy, is that I would write a 1 in front of the first task point. So find out what the patient wants to know. 2, explain about the condition. 3, talk about the prognosis. 4, answer any questions. 5, give advice on management of the condition. 6, advise the parent to make sure that the child avoids certain things. Now, if you would have put bullet points, what might happen to you is that you're going through the task, and this happens to everyone, that they get blank or they get a little confused, or the interlocutor gives you a surprise and asks you a question. What that's going to do is that that's going to obstruct your flow, so you won't really know where you are. And then what people do is that, okay, I'm going to talk about uh, uh, so do you have any questions about eczema? And then the parent might say, oh, I know about eczema, I've had eczema myself, so I'm a little worried about it. What's I know about what it means, but what's the prognosis like? So what that does is that the interlocutor themselves have jumped from one point to the other. Okay, so what might happen to you is that you've explained the prognosis, but then you don't know where you stand. Okay, so if you would have put in numerical letters, so if you would have put in 1 and then 2 and then 3, so you know you're at 3 right now, so you can quickly jump to the next point. If you think that the interlocutor skipped some point, then you can go back to the condition and then go on to 4. So that's basically going to create a little bit of a clarity in your mind when you go blank. Sometimes what happens is that um, some students, what they do is that they get stuck on one point. For example, in this scenario, if you just get stuck on the relationship between eczema and food allergies, and you've gone on a very long lecture about it, which lasted about 2.5 minutes. You shouldn't do that, but perhaps that happened on your exam. So now you don't know where you are at. So what some students do is that then they start reading the task again. So that's going to waste a lot of your time. But if you put numericals in front of each and every task point, you quickly know, okay, I'm on 4, I finished 4, now I'm going to go to 5. So this is one excellent way of stopping blank spaces. Remember, they're going to grade you on fluency, so they're going to see how fluent you are in English. And if you have these blank points, they might think, oh, this person doesn't know enough English, because they're going blank, so they're thinking a lot. So they're not going to be able to speak in English when they come and work in a foreign country. So you don't want that to happen. You know everything already. You don't want to give them that opportunity. So numerical letters before task points, and depending upon your speed, I would give this up to 10 seconds. Guys, if you understood this point, just type in yes, and then we'll move on to the next strategy. Okay, great. So what do we do next? Now, remember, they're trying to assess your ability to understand English, okay? So what the OET examiners will do, that they'll throw in a few difficult words into your scenario, or a few medical terms into your scenario, which they'll expect you to explain. And explaining that will be one of the main points as to how they would grade you on your OET. So if you look at this scenario, can anyone just tell me, what do you think are the difficult terms in this role play card? What you would like to identify as a difficult term, which might need a little bit more extra explanation to your patient? Excellent. Um, so everyone's identified eczema as a difficult term, which is good. And there's another difficult term, if you guys want to identify, perhaps one more. Okay, excellent. So we've got three difficult terms which people agree they would need to describe to the patient, which is eczema. So you'll have to explain what eczema is. The second term is prognosis, very correct. Most people who are not medically trained might not know what prognosis means. So that's excellent. You'll have to talk about prognosis. And inherited. So inherited would be, I would say, in between. Now, what I want everyone to do is, if I was a parent and you were to tell me about eczema, how are you going to describe it to me? And then your second point is, if I was a parent and you were going to explain what prognosis means, I want you to type into the chat window how you would explain on your OET speaking. Okay, so Aruna has given us an answer. She said eczema is a skin condition characterized by irritation of the skin along with the red rash. It is just like an allergic reaction. Fasiha has said it is a skin condition in which itchy patches appear on one's body. Jackson, you need to explain how you would explain it to a parent who is not medically trained. So I need you to give me full sentences. Okay. Anyone else wants to try? Okay. So Kinza has said my provisional diagnosis is eczema. Did you ever hear about this condition before? All right, let me explain it to you first. Not your first, to you first. It is a condition in which a person itchiness on his or her skin. So Kinza, please pay attention to the grammar. It's not so. Before we pay attention to the grammar, Kinza, this child has been diagnosed with eczema. So read the task again. It says that a worried patient has brought his or her young child who suffers from eczema. So it's not your diagnosis. You haven't made the diagnosis. They've already been diagnosed with eczema. Okay. So it's don't because I'm you might be quite used to doing this on OET writing where you talk about provisional diagnosis, and that's actually what the examiners are looking for, whether you've memorized some sentences. uh, did you ever hear? It should be, have you ever heard about this condition before? It is a condition in which a person gets or has, rather than gets itchiness, it should be has itchiness on his or her skin. So Kinza, please pay attention to your grammar. Okay. So Aruna has said most children will outgrow, which means with the passage of time, this condition reduces. Eczema is preventable, not completely cured. So Aruna, you've talked about prevention. So prevention is a different term. Prevention basically means stopping something from happening. Okay. But what they've told you that the condition can be controlled. So that means you can't prevent it from happening. You can prevent the complications from happening. So eczema isn't preventable. The complications of eczema are preventable. Okay. Um, I don't know if you've understood that point. Please type in yes. It's quite important because people do confuse prevention from control to cure. So prevention means that you stop something from completely happening. Control is that you've got a condition which has already happened, but you're able to avoid the complications or avoid it from getting worse. And cure is that you stop the condition from happening ever again. Okay, excellent. If you've understood this point, so basically in this portion, what we're going to do is we're going to be putting a star or the difficult words. So I'm going to be putting a star on eczema and I'm going to be putting a star on prognosis. Okay. And what I'm going to do is once I'm done with everything, I'm done with my planning, I'm going to spend a few seconds on thinking about how I'm going to explain eczema, because if I explain eczema pretty well, that's going to be the main point on my OET speaking, which is going to really impress the examiner. So if I planned my eczema, how I'm going to speak about eczema and how I'm going to describe the sentences. And Kinza, we pay attention to the grammar when we're doing this. If I make a solid plan, that's going to impress the examiners and that's going to automatically get me to passing. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to be putting 2 stars on the difficult terms on the role play. Okay, Guys, if you've understood that, so what we're going to do, we're going to be putting numericals on the task points and stars on the difficult terms. If you've understood this, please type in yes, and then we can move on to the next point. Okay. So Kinza has asked, what should be the sentence for prognosis? Okay. So what I would explain to the parent is that eczema is a skin condition in which a person with certain triggers or certain things which provoke or cause the rash to appear, they get rashes on their skin, which are often quite itchy and red. They usually appear on the arms and legs. Do you have any questions? So the parent says, no, I don't have any questions. Okay, then I would say, all right, now I'm going to talk to you about the prognosis of eczema. So prognosis basically means what the course of the disease would be, or whether we'll be able to treat the disease or how the disease might progress. Now, eczema itself is a condition which is not completely curable. So there's nothing which is going to reverse the fact that your child has eczema. But with good treatment and avoiding the triggers, we'll be able to keep the condition under control. There is also a small possibility that the child, or there is a likelihood that the child might even grow out of it. What that means is that after a certain age, the child might not have eczema anymore. So that's how I would describe prognosis. Another way of describing prognosis, for example, if it's a patient who's got cancer, you're going to say, I assume you would like to know about the prognosis of the cancer. What prognosis means is how the condition might progress with time. With time and with good chemotherapy, we should be able to cure you of this cancer. That being said, there is a possibility that before cure, the cancer might spread to the rest of the body, which might then become incurable. But our plan is to try and give you the best possible treatment for now, so that we're able to avoid the progression of disease. Okay, so that's how I would explain prognosis in two different scenarios. So guys, if you've understood this, please type in yes, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, great. Now, remember guys, on the OET speaking, they're looking for clinical communication, and one of the main things in clinical communication is sympathy and empathy. What I like to do, or what I would like to do on my OET speaking, is that I would anticipate emotions. So this is actually quite useful even if you're giving some advanced exams, like even your MRCP PACES or CLAP2 exams. You always expect a certain emotion which might come out of your interlocutor during this scenario. Okay, and depending upon what emotion they're going to have, you're going to plan what you're going to say to your interlocutor. Okay, so can anyone tell me what emotion the interlocutor might express on this scenario? So the question is, you always expect the interlocutor to display a certain emotion on the role play, and because you have to show sympathy and empathy, you're going to anticipate that emotion, and with good English sentences, you're going to plan what you're going to say to your interlocutor. So excellent. People have started giving in answers which include anxious, he might be worried or tense. Excellent. So even in the scenario, you can see that it says a worried parent has brought his or her young child. So the OET is giving you a clue that the emotion that you anticipate is going to be worry. So can someone tell me what would be your sentence, or what would be a good sentence by which you would try and express sympathy and empathy for this worried parent? So guys, the question is, and I want you to give it a good try, and I want everyone to participate. I want you to tell me what would be a good sentence that you're going to use when talking to this person, which is going to show sympathy and empathy. So one answer that we've got is your concerns are understandable or reasonable. So Jackson, what I would do is I would say your concerns are understandable and completely reasonable. Okay, because it's not that it can be either of the two, it's both of them. Okay, I understand your concerns, but don't worry, we are here to help you in the best possible way. Okay, very good sentences. I can sense or see that you are overwhelmed. That's also quite good. Being a mother, I know how difficult it must be for you to see your child in this situation, but don't worry, we're here to help. Excellent sentences, very good. So what we did during our planning stage is going to help us create these sentences. Okay, we're going to write, okay, this is my patient's emotion, so I'm going to I put in stars in front of eczema and prognosis. Now I'm going to put a square in front of the emotion, which is going to be my crutch to display sympathy and empathy to the patient. Adijola has said, I understand your plight, madam. We will try our best to alleviate your child's problem. Excellent. Very good job. Okay. Guys, if you've understood everything till now, please type in yes, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Okay. So what we've done till now is that we've made sure we know of our roles. We've highlighted what the different task points are. We've highlighted what the difficult terms are that I'll be asked to explain, and we've highlighted the emotion that will make us express sympathy and empathy. If you've still got time after this, what I would advise is go through the task again and then just see if you want to make any sentences about things which you would be asked to do on this role play. So in this case, they've asked you to make sentences about, besides prognosis, you've been asked to talk about the child avoiding things that will irritate the skin. Okay, so what I might do is that I might try and make some alternative sentences during my second task reading. So you would say that I would advise you to make sure that your son or your daughter avoids things that will irritate the skin. So instead of irritate, because I've still got time, then I'll start planning a few more things. I'll start planning alternative words to irritate. So one might be which might provoke the eczema, or which might exacerbate the eczema. So things like that, they might also increase my score. So I might say that make sure that the child, instead of avoids, I might use another alternative term. So the child stays away from things or doesn't use things that might provoke the skin further, like most soaps. Kinza, aggravate is also quite a good word. So which might aggravate the skin. For example, soaps, wool next to the skin, scratching and rubbing the skin. So that's going to be at the very, very last point if you still have time left. But guys, if you do whatever I've told you till now, it's really quite difficult to fail. Okay, so make sure that you use your first 3 minutes extremely carefully, because with good planning you'll be able to make your life much easier on OET speaking. Okay, so that was the end. Guys, if you have any questions, please type into the chat window. While we're waiting for questions, I just wanted to make you aware that Teachio is offering speaking as well as writing checks. If you're interested in them, what I would say is that please let us know at least 4 weeks in advance of your exam, because that helps us plan very nicely about your speaking sessions, and it helps us pace your speaking or writing sessions quite nicely. And we've actually had a number of people passing this time. On the last results, we've had 18 students passed on their first attempts on OET. So if you do want to enroll on OET or on Teacher Academy OET writing and speaking checks, please mail us on teacheracademy@gmail.com, or you might WhatsApp us on the number provided, or you can even text Dr. Prashant on the number on your chat window. Aruna, we're going to be opening a subscription for reading quite soon, so keep an eye on the web page. Jackson, you should be able, so it depends upon place to place. Some places they give you a cue card which is laminated, so you won't be able to write on that, but most of them will give you a cue card which you can write on. All right. Okay. So thanks everyone. I hoped you learned something new today and you're going to take back something useful from this session. Just make sure that if you have any questions, you let us know, you email us, and we're happy to answer as many questions. Please make sure that it's going to be the holiday season quite soon, but if your exam is in January, try and study a little bit while you're celebrating, but make sure that you celebrate as well, because it's important that you have a life during these difficult times. So try and get a balance and get back to your studies when you do get the time. But I hope everyone stays safe and keeps well, and hopefully I'll see you working with us in the NHS very, very soon. Good luck, guys, and thanks for joining us.